Hey guys, Ario here, and today we are going to be giving you a guide for the Thief class in Guild Wars 2. This guide we're going to cover all of the builds that I know for Thief, and I'm going to kind of explain to you how to set each one up, how to play it, why it's good and worth using, and cover some little tricks that you can do with it. So basically just how to Thief in PvP and World v World. And yeah, that's about it. Let's get started. So the first spec we're going to talk about is the Sword Dagger spec. It's a very high mobility spec. It relies on dodging your opponent's strikes in order to avoid their damage while still inflicting some of your own via auto attacks and your number 3 skill along with steal. It's a very high sustained damage build, so you're not going to be super bursty. I mean, if you get familiar enough with the spec, you can do a pretty good burst with it. I mean, I've insta-killed Shatter Mesmers with it, but most of the time it's going to be a very sustained damage kind of spec, but it's still really fun to play. So let's get into the build itself. I'm going to pull it up here in a sec, just let me do that. For runes, you can run strength runes. I've been running Holbrook as of late because I kind of like the extra condition management you get because of it. And we're going to be running the Zerker Amulet, which is amazing. Like, it's basically your god amulet for Thief, because it's going to give you a lot of power and a lot of crit ability, and at the same time it's going to give you some extra vitality. Like, if you look at the Assassin Amulet, you don't get that extra vitality, so you're going to be glassy and any conditions will melt you. So using the Zerker Amulet is probably your best choice if you want to run a spec like this, just because of extra colony management and things like that. Your sigils on your Sword Dagger are going to be fire and air, and the reason for that is those give a lot of extra burst when they proc. Let's see if I can get some off. There we go. That's a fire proc. Air procs also proc from crits and things like that. It adds a good amount of extra damage to your hits. I think I'm gonna see if I can find it here to see what this one hit for, but most of the time they're gonna be critting for like 4 or 5 5k extra damage. It's really nice. This one, yeah, this one hit for 792, so that one didn't crit, but the sigils themselves, their crits are separate from your actual hits, so sometimes they'll crit, sometimes they won't, but most of the time you're still going to be dealing a lot of extra damage. Now, I like to use the Signet of Agility in my build. I'm just going to put that out there. You can also take the Signet of Infiltration for the extra stun break, but I really like having the Signet of Agility. As you can see, it refills your endurance completely. So if you're having a lot of people focus you and you just need more dodges, you can do that. Or if you're getting overloaded with conditions and you really just need to get some of those off of you so you don't die, especially in the case of fighting guardians with their burns, it's kind of scary. So you gotta have a way to get those off of you. I'm actually gonna show you a really cool trick here in a bit, and it's gonna involve porting around with your sword, but for now we're going to look at the short bow. The short bow is going to be using an energy sigil and a generosity sigil. Now what this is going to let you do is have a very defensive playstyle ingrained in your short bow, which is going to help you basically avoid most damage that is put onto you while still putting in a ton of damage of your own. As you can see, you can also blast poison fields that you lay down with your short bow by using Cluster Bomb to put on area weakness and highly reduce the amount of damage that you take from DPS heavy classes like warriors or rifle engineers, especially if they're running Celestial Rifle. You can use steel to heal up. I'll show you the traits in a minute just so you can understand what this is all using, but I wanted you to get a grip of what the skills are and kind of how this build can play first before I started talking about how you set it up, because if you understand what to do, with it first, then you'll understand why it's set up the way it is. The short bow, as you can see, it gives you a lot of mobility with your ports from your number 5 and your shadow step with number 3. No, your evade with number 3, I'm sorry. Your sword skills are going to mainly be used with just the first 3 skills in your set. You're not going to use a lot of your dagger throw or your cloak and dagger. Now, if you look, you see that the skill number 3 will use up your initiative really fast. You got to be careful when using that skill. It hits hard, but it's a very high risk skill. And if you look the number 2, it'll port you to your foe, and if you activate it again, it'll port you back to where you originally were. There's a really cool trick you can do here, which I talked about earlier, that allows you to cancel the port. What you can do is, if you have a target, you can jump and press the skill at the same time to cancel the back port. And so when you activate that skill, you'll get all the benefits like the condition removal and all that stuff, but you won't actually be ported back. So it gives you a very good chasing ability in settings like World v World. If you're fighting a great sword warrior or something and he starts running away, you can chase him down. But you do have to be careful though, because first thing first, you have to have a target. Make sure you always have a target when you're doing that. And also, keep an eye on the initiative bar. If you see mine got really low there, you want to make sure you don't do that. Do not get low initiative when trying to do that chasing thing, because if they turn around and try to fight you again, you don't want to be caught out in the open with no initiative, because you'll die. That's just how it works when you're playing Thief. Initiative is a global cooldown, so technically while you're playing Thief, you're always fighting cooldowns, because as long as you're using initiative, you're using cooldowns, in a manner of speaking. Your healing skill is going to be withdrawal, and if you saw, you're able to swap weapons when using withdraw to cancel the roll and still give yourself the full healing, the evasion, all the benefits of the heal skill, but you don't lose positioning. And if you're going to use something like a Shadow Refuge, you can activate that and swap inside, so you'll still have the stealth, you'll have the heal, you'll have the evasion. I mean, you'll get everything from it and allow yourself to get a clean getaway. And also, if you notice, the stealth lasts just about as long as the heal skill's cooldown. So as soon as the stealth comes off, you should be able to put your heal back up and get back into the fighting again. So that's kind of nice. You want to make sure you watch out for your dodges. I know I forget this a lot. I forget to use the actual dodges on my weapon set. Don't forget to use that. I know it sounds silly, but if we look at the traits here, you can see we're running 20066. The acrobatics line is what causes you to want to dodge a lot, because you're going to get vigor from vigorous recovery, which is your it's your adept trait, and you're going to take also feline grace, which is the minor trait in the master tree. And that's going to give you some extra endurance on use, but you got to be careful when you're using your dodges, because if you don't, you'll not get the damage bonus that comes later. Pain response for extra condition removal and extra healing, because regen is a wonderful thing, and having that makes you feel amazing. You're also going to take power of inertia for extra damage. And here's what I was talking about, fluid strikes. That's an extra 10% damage when your endurance isn't full. As a sword dagger spec, you should not ever have a full endurance bar. You should always have some endurance gone, so you can be constantly fighting with the extra damage pressure that comes from the set. I mean, if you see, I'm constantly putting up a lot of pressure just because of how much damage I'm getting off of having a lower endurance bar. But also, as you can see, when I'm taking hits, it's dealing a ton of damage to me. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff, because playing a sword dagger spec is a very high risk, high reward thing. You get lots of dodges and stuff, but you can get down really quick and really easy. So there you go. That's kind of how that goes. Yeah, let's roam around here for a bit, just because. So, now that we're actually going to be talking again, we're going to talk about team fighting. And a big part of team fighting is learning how to evade chain using the number 3 on your short bow and your actual dodges. You can chain that with your dodges to create a chain evade, which should let you avoid pretty much all damage coming into you if you're executing it like this. You know, you activate 2 of those, activate your signet, and you do that in order to avoid all the damage coming into you if you need to get into a team fight and start supporting, but you start getting focused by bursty classes and stuff like that. And as you can see, your stuff refills pretty quickly, so you should have the ability to continue to move around after you've done your initial evade chain. And normally you won't even go through the entire chain, so you should always have that spare endurance or initiative on your build. But this kind of goes for any time you're using the short bow. You got to pay attention to what your other team is doing, and when you're in team fights, use your short bow, unless you can get in there with your sword and dagger and you can burst somebody out really quick who's low health. Other than that, don't risk going into a team fight with a sword, because you're going to get downed really quick. So here, I'm going to demonstrate this really quick. Say I'm in a team fight, I start shooting them with the short bow, put some burst in with cluster bomb, steal, get my stealth, immobilize, then I can switch over to my sword and burst them out for the final amounts of health. And yeah, that covers most of the sword dagger spec. So if you have any questions about that, you can always message me and we can talk about it, and I will help answer any questions that you have. Also, if I'm not making this very clear, then I apologize, but I am always willing to answer questions you have if you're confused. So the next spec we're going to look at is the pistol dagger condition spec. With this spec, you're going to want to run crate runes, which are over here, and that's going to give you a lot of bleeding duration. It's a very, very condition focused set, but your main damage is going to come from your bleeds. Sigils, you can kind of do whatever you want. I take the Sigil of Agony and Malice, but because Malice isn't in PvP, you can just kind of pick whatever. Although, I don't recommend this build for PvP, because it uses Shadow Arts, and Shadow Arts is a stealth-focused trait line, which is not all that helpful for PvP. Because in SPvP, you do not want to be in stealth because you need to be constantly applying pressure to points, and they nerf stealth, so you can't capture points when you're in stealth. So our trait spread is now going to be 20606, and it's going to be utilizing Shadow's Rejuvenation, Shadow's Embrace, and Infusion of Shadow or Shadow Protector, depending on your preferences. I'll explain why in a bit. I just want to kind of put that out there. There is a possibility for either of those traits. Infusion of Shadow does give a better benefit to this set specifically, though, because it does allow you to perma-stealth by chaining Cloak and Daggers together. So I'll also showcase that in a bit, but first I want to finish equipping all my stuff and going over the rest of the spec with you. Some things take a while. I don't like it, but they do. Let's take a moment of silence while I put that on. And there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna actually talk, because if not, it's gonna be ridiculous. So the focus of this spec, as you're gonna see in a bit, is to have extreme condy removal from Hide and Shadows and Shadow's Embrace. You're also gonna use the Bewildering Ambush trait for your steal instead of Sleight of Hand. And you're going to be able to put on a Condi Burst. I mean, you can see that those Condis are dealing a ton of damage. And if you're wondering how to Condi Burst, the big thing with that is to use the number 3 on your pistol dagger set, then steal, then use number 3 again, and that's going to put on 4 stacks of Torment, Confusion. You can also use your Cloak and Dagger followed by your Burst skill to put on a ton of extra bleeds onto a foe. I mean, you see, this is just ripping down my opponent. If you start taking damage, you can heal up, which is another stealth. so you can automatically reopen with your bleeds. So you should always have a very strong amount of conditions on your opponent, and because you're running with an offhand dagger, you know, you can keep yourself stealth, you can regen. I mean, if you look, I'm getting a ton of regen off of this. Shadow's Rejuvenation is a very strong trait, as when you chain your cloak and daggers together properly, you can easily down a foe, and then finish them off with condition damage, or a stealth stomp. Either one works, you just have to remember how to play in certain situations. And you'll normally run with the Signet of Shadows, which I just equipped because of its mobility. The spec itself does not have a lot of mobility outside of combat. You're rather limited as to what you can do, so you need the extra movement speed that the Signet provides so you don't get caught in a really bad situation by foes. And it allows you to kind of move around from victim to victim as you Condi burst them with ease and enjoy yourself. It's a fairly noob-friendly spec because normally in the open world you're going to run with dire gear and crate runes. Let's see if I can get myself a little bit low. Oh, no, not that low. Bad mesmer. Shoo. Come on, Moa. Okay. To demonstrate, bam. Full health. Hide in Shadows is a great skill because you get the regen, you get the Shadows Rejuvenation trait, and then you can open up again with a really heavy Condi burst, and finish off your opponent once again, because Condi PD is very strong. So, as I was saying, it's a very noob-friendly spec because you remain extremely tanky due to the fact that you're in full dire, but you're still able to apply a ton of conditions with your set. So if you just like conditions and you want to try it out on Thief, feel free, because it's really easy and it's really fun. Well, not exactly fun. I don't find it entertaining because I prefer power builds on Thief, but for some people it's really fun and it's pretty strong, so I would enjoy it. I can understand people playing it. That was just a quick overview of traits, just so you can see exactly what I have put on. We're gonna kill this guy off, and then I think we're gonna move on to the next build because there's not much else I can talk about. There's not a lot of really cool hidden things in this spec. It's rather simple, which is why it's so noob friendly, because it's easy to understand. Although what you should take into account is, you saw when I used my elite skill, it not only put on the elite skill, but what it did was put on poison, torment, and bleeding onto my foe. And because Basilisk Venom will be your elite skill, you're going to be applying a lot of conditions with that because of the low cooldown of Basilisk Venom. So the next build we're going to be looking at is the Double Dagger Burst build. It's a power build, and again, using full Zerker. And I like to use pack runes on it. I think it provides a lot of good utility for that set as well. And you're going to be running with Hidden Killer, Critical Haste, and Invigorating Precision, along with the normal Shadow Arts traits. Ooh, whoops. I forgot to put on Hidden Killer. Huh. We do not want Invigorating Precision because Hidden Killer gives us better stats. It gives you a guaranteed crit when you come out of stealth, so you cloak and dagger, and you backstab, it's going to be a guaranteed crit every single time, unless you have weakness on you, which sucks. But anytime you come out of stealth and you put a backstab into your opponent, you're going to have that guaranteed crit, and that's going to give you a lot of damaging capabilities. You can take out good chunks of people's health in quick succession, and again, go for stealth stomps because they're awesome. So, I think this build is where I want to explain the trait variation that you can do, and that's switching from Infusion of Shadow over to Shadow Protector. Now, it does give you a little extra immediate regen, but you can't chain Cloak and Daggers as well, like you saw me doing against the Guardian when I was on my Pistol Dagger set. Here, let's equip that, just so I can give you guys a little overview. Also, if you're contemplating running this in World v World, run with Valkyrie armor, Berserker weapons, and Berserker trinkets. I just thought I'd show that to you guys, because a lot of people have been asking, well, what do I use in World v World? Bulker rearmor. That's the way to go, and then Berserker everything else. Just in case you were wondering, that's a very strong way to set it up, and that'll probably give you the best results possible for playing multiple builds. As you can see there, you have the ability to charge up a Cloak and Dagger and then steal right before it hits in order to get a stealth port, which is what I just did. It's a very quick thing, and it takes a little bit of getting used to, but eventually it'll kind of feel natural, and it's a much better way than just running up like that and trying to Cloak and Dagger. Now, because you have Infusion of Shadow, chaining Cloak and Daggers like this on a foe is a very good way to make sure they get low eventually, and then you can burst them down, stealth up, and go for a stealth stomp, because why not? So, yeah, I think now I'm going to show you the Shadow Protector variation. What this does is it gives you it says it gives your allies regen whenever you grant them stealth. Now it actually does work for you. I have tested this before. It does work for you, so you can get extra regen. And because of Shadow's Embrace and Shadow's Rejuvenation, you can manage Condis really well in combination with Shadow Protector. So if you watch when I stealth, there we go, 10 seconds of regen. So I can maintain permanent regen with this build, although it is a little bit of a higher skill floor because you have to pay a little bit more attention to what your initiative is, because you have to be constantly managing your initiative so you don't run out from trying to chain Cloak and Daggers. Because the only drawback to using it is, yes, you get more sustain, but you can't chain Cloak and Daggers for as long because you will eventually run out of initiative and die. But it's still good, and it's still a very strong counterpart if you really want to use that instead of Infusion of Shadow. It still allows you to fight outnumbered really well, and with great success, just because of the amount of sustain it gives you. So I'm going to switch that back over to Infusion of Shadow and get ourselves ready to look at the Dagger Pistol Thief build. This one has a lot of variation in itself because there's two different versions of it. There's a Shadow Arts version and a Trickery version. First, I'm going to show you the Shadow Arts version. It's going to be the same setup as the Double Dagger Burst build, and it's going to revolve the same way. You use black powder with Heart Seekers through it to gain stealth. I put in another one there when I shouldn't have, but that's going to allow you to enter fights undetected, and you can blind when necessary, so you can run up, put a blind field on your foe for damage mitigation, jump through it for stealth, and get a backstab. So you can also use Headshot, which I just showed you, for interrupting key skills like, let's say they're going to heal, or Thief's about to use Shadow Refuge. You can use that, and it's really strong. Shadow Shot is the number 3, and it's probably one of the strongest gap closers in the game. As you can see, it ports you up to your foe, blinding them, and putting in a hit. I'd actually recommend it over Heartseeker because it's a port, not a leap, and so there's less chance of something getting in the way or something going wrong unless people know how to dodge it really well. Now, a really cool thing about this that I haven't shown you yet is the fact that, say you're in stealth and you want to use it, if you're behind your foe, it will activate backstab instead of your normal attack, so you can use it when you're trying to catch up to a foe and backstab them. You can use that to get your backstab off, and it's very effective. So that pretty much covers the Shadow Arts version of the DP set. There's not a lot of extra stuff to say, so we're going to take a look at the Trickery setup now, and that's going to be mainly used in PvP. The Trickery setup, the Shadow Arts one, is normally a World v World set, and for PvP in the Trickery line, you're going to use the same Trickery setup as you would for an SD build, but because of this, you're going to have very limited Condi removal outside of Hide and Shadows, so you're going to have to be very careful about Condis getting stacked on you because they will melt you rather quickly, unfortunately, but that's life. So it's got a much higher skill ceiling though, because you can do more with it just because of the utility that is offered with the Trickery line. And for this one, you'd want to run Infiltrator Signet because of the initiative regen and the extra stun break. Because as a DP thief, you cannot afford to get CC'd and stuff. With Trickery line, you can actually do 4 Heartseekers through the black powder when you get really comfortable, which stacks up to 7 seconds of stealth and gives you a very good opening in a fight because you can wait till some of your initiative comes back and then go for your clean stomp because it's a strong set. There's not a ton of variation you can do with this. Yeah, you can play around with it, but overall, from what I've seen people play, that's kind of the best option you got. You can also switch out pack runes for ogre runes if you want a little more damage with that. Unfortunately, I cannot give you a very good guide on sword pistol, like I'm going to show you here. That's not something I'm very well versed in because I have never really played it. So if you want a sword pistol build, you're kind of going to have to go somewhere else, because as you can see right here, I'm not very familiar with the setup. So if you want a guide for that, you might have to go somewhere else. But overall, that's pretty much the Thief class in the setup of World v World and PvP. I hope this was helpful, and if you like the video, please leave a comment below, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.